What happened to him from there, from that point, and how old was he?
From there, and that would have put him at his late teens, early 20s when they escaped. Then we lost track of him for a very, very long time. And I was able to do a lot of television appearances. I did one in California right before Christmas in 1996. And they asked me if I wanted to just give a personal message to Johnny. So they brought the camera in close, and my message to Johnny was that no matter what had happened to him, I loved him. And I would do whatever I could to help him. But I didn't know where he was. And my address was in the phone book because I had moved from our family home. And I said, my address is in the phone book. Contact me. Well, several months went by, and then one night there was a knock at my door around 2:30 in the morning, and I went out and looked out the little security thing on my door, and there was two young men standing out in the hallway. And I said, who is it? And he said, it's me, Mom, it's Johnny. Now, that might not sound significant to anyone, but from the time Johnny was a little boy, if he ever came to, his brother or sister's room and they had the door closed, he'd knock and they'd say, who is it? And he'd say, it's me, it's Johnny. He used the same phrase. And I opened the door and I let them in. The one young man didn't say much of anything. Johnny's hair was long, dyed black, and he was deeply tanned, almost like he had darkened his skin with some tanning products. And he just went on to tell me what took place with him, how he was put into this ring, how he did break free. All of what I had been told was accurate, and that he and this other kid had been more or less on the run ever since. And I thought he was home to stay at that point. And he wasn't. He said he could only stay a short time, and then he would have to leave. And I offered to call my private investigator to see if we could figure out what to do and put him in someplace safe. And he said, no, you don't understand. He said, there is still a great deal of danger for me and for you if I were to come back. They don't want me telling my story. And
okay, Jim.
So he left.
Then he leaves, and Johnny was in
he
his
left that night.
Then. Okay.
Yeah.
Jim, what happened to him at that point? What kind of control was he still under from your perspective as a detective in this? What was going on there?
Well, we know for a fact, I've seen it many times, once these boys are taken, you have 72 hours to get them back. And if you don't, and then even if you do, if the police officials that do this don't know what they're doing, they will never get the kid back. The kid will disappear again. But in Johnny's particular case, we were able to verify through a government source that he had in fact been brought to Chicago to lay the groundwork for Johnny going to see Noreen. So we know this is controlled, and it's been my experience, and in many cases I have personally interviewed people who were in the underground, and much of the information, in fact all of the information that Noreen had on Johnny fits in what my investigations had disclosed over the years. The Indian reservation and all that. There were many things that we verified, and this is why when people say, why didn't he go to the police? Well, why would he go to the police? In most cases, the police haven't done anything. So I don't know what police he would have went to help him, because there were none. And this is what happens, and this is why people have to understand this. We need help.
Exactly. Now, Johnny comes back for those few minutes with Noreen and leaves again, saying that there's still, I can't stay, Mom, because you could be killed, I could be killed. What kind of control, what happened? What are they doing to him to this day to prevent him? Basically, they're basically saying, you talk and you're dead, right?
Well, not only is he dead, but the family. And, again, I always like to use cases that I personally saw. We had a guy commit suicide in New York, and and when we investigated, we found out that he'd been kidnapped at the age of 13 in Texas, and when we got to him, he was probably in his early 30s, and he was never able to go back. But he ended up committing suicide because his lover cheated on him. But so we know that this happens, and there were plenty of other cases where guys just never went home, or they'll go there and then disappear again. We know that there is a well-established underground where these people can survive in.
All right. And so his life is in danger if he ever tries to come forward, and he really has nobody protecting him. The FBI to this day isn't helping, in a sense. Noreen, you had an experience with them, I don't know how, it wasn't that far, many years ago, when you actually got so upset with the FBI, with the officer who didn't want to do anything, that you threw a cup of coffee in his face. Tell us about that experience. So where can he go? Go ahead.
Yes, there had been another kidnapping that took place in Des Moines, and it was a very rich family, and the FBI jumped in and they got the boy back in 36 hours. Then they came over to my home. Herb Hawkins was the special agent. He was in charge of the whole 5-state region. And he came walking into our house and he said, "Oh boy, that was a tough case. We really had to work hard on that one." And he said there was a human life at stake. And I said, "Well, what do you call Johnny?" He said, "Well, now, Mrs. Gosch, you're going to have to understand the other family was much more prominent than you are. You have to realize that we had to enter that case and not Johnny's." And that's what that fool said to me. And I was standing at the counter pouring coffee for everyone, and I picked up the cup and hurled it across the room. I missed his head by about an inch.
Good for you. What a statement.
And then I ordered them out of the house, and he said, "Well, we can see that you're overwrought." I said, "No, I'm not overwrought. I am so disgusted. I'm about ready to throw up on you listening to what you just said, how the other family's prominence and money made the difference as to why you entered that case and not Johnny's." I said, "Get out." And I threw them out of the house, and that was the last conversation I had with an FBI agent.
Now, we only have a few minutes left, but I promise in the weeks to come we'll have both of you on again. And my hope is from this perspective, I know this show, I know that you don't get much publicity anymore in the mainstream. They want to cover this story up, but hopefully the publicity that we get can prevent other children from being taken. And secondly, my hope is that Johnny will be able to come home because they won't have any choice. And I'll tell you this, that is my hope, that someday you can see him and live normally, because they have ruined your life. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it. They've taken your son away from you. Then they dangle him in front of you when he's in his mid-30s. And then he tells you this. I don't know how you've been able to survive, Noreen. In the last minute, tell us from deep within inside your heart, what's kept you going? I mean, this is almost worse than death itself.
I have a very positive outlook. I have a very deep spiritual faith. But I also remembered every day who was the true victim, and that was Johnny, not me. And I did not internalize victimization, because sometimes if you do that, it weakens you, because you then become a victim. And I knew that Johnny was the ultimate victim throughout this whole time.
A very good advice for those of you out there who've experienced any kind of loss that may help. Jim Rothstein, last minute here. Your thoughts. Can we ever get Johnny back home, living a normal life, or have they basically done him in for good? I know that's not a good way to say it, but I don't know any other way to do it. Can we get him home?
Yes, and I can, if the right people are listening, I can tell you that I do have the connection now that if he was to come forward, or any other person in this, that I do have the connections now that he can be helped, or whoever it is, and that something will be done.
Okay.
The word is out.
All right. Jim and Noreen, I want to thank you. We're all out of time. We will have you on in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.